Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners issues and updates for December 12th, if you can believe it, 2023. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
You are now meeting as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board of Directors. This is an advisory board and commission appointment. Tony, go ahead, please.
Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board, staffed by NCPRD, currently has 2 openings on their commission due to term expirations and a resignation. Through a recruitment process, the City of Milwaukee is recommending Wilda Parks to serve as their representative on the advisory board.
Okay. Comments, Commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
I move we reappoint Wilda Parks to the Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved the appointment of Wilda Parks to the Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board and seconded by Commissioner Savas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Director Shull.
Aye.
Director West.
Aye.
Director Savas.
Aye.
Director Schrader.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Smith, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors?
I will recess as the NCPRD and convene as the Water Environment Services Board.
You are now meeting as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors. First, advisory board and commission appointments. Tony, go ahead, please.
Water Environment Services Advisory Committee, staffed by Department of Water and Environment Services, currently has 4 openings on their committee. Through a recruitment process, 4 applications were received, which qualified for the seats to which they are to be appointed. Recommendations are Rita Baker for unincorporated representative, Christopher Bowker for Gladstone, William Gifford for Oregon City, Christina Brow for business representative.
Thank you, Tony. I will consider a motion.
Chair, I move we approve the slate.
Second.
Commissioner Savas has moved for the Water Environment Services Advisory Committee that we appoint Rita Baker, Christopher Bowker, William Gifford, and Christina Brow. Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Director West.
Aye.
Director Shull.
Aye.
Director Schrader.
Aye.
Director Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank
Gary.
you. You're still meeting as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors. Next is request for consent agenda item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for work crew services. Agreement value not to exceed $260,000 over 4 years. Funding is through Water Environment Services Surface Water Operating Fund. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. This is an IGA between WES and the Sheriff's Office for their work crews to do vegetation maintenance on our water quality facilities throughout our service area. We think it's a good deal for us, and we appreciate the Sheriff's Office
Why is
willingness.
Sheriff's Office doing vegetation control?
They have work crews, they're parole and probation.
Oh, I see. So it's not the sworn or, thank you, that
No.
wasn't made clear to me. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Seeing
Chair.
Commissioner
Yeah, I just
Shaw.
want to say, I think this is a very healthy program as benefits West, and it's also a beneficial outlet for some of our folks that are incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah. Hey, Greg. I just had a question. It's a great program working for WES. Have any of those folks who have done this kind of work for you ever gone on to the community college? You know, or is there a workforce connection after they're released?
I don't know.
It seems to me that would be
I think we have someone in the audience who would like to answer that question.
okay.
Nancy Altman, would you please want to come forward
Okay.
and introduce yourself and enlighten us? Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, Nancy Artman, Sheriff's Finance Manager. These are actually individuals who are assigned to community service, so this is an alternative to incarceration.
Okay.
And There is some work involvement through our transitional services programs, so that is an option, but these are folks that are less justice involved, and it's an alternative to make amends.
Okay. But
Great.
still, there could be a wonderful work connection there if
Yes.
they're doing Wes, because they're great paying union jobs, and
Yes,
it'd be nice to
agreed.
have them. Okay, so, but there's no real coordination.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
That's good.
I'll look into that.
okay, thank you, Greg. I think it'd be a great idea, so, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Gary, what's next?
All right, thank you. Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as Water Environment Services and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Your meeting is the Board of County Commissioners for the rest of today. Next is request for consent agenda for the Board of County Commissioners. I'm actually going to jump ahead to the Finance Department because we have an elected official in the room. So please come forward. Finance, request for consent agenda item 1, approval of a lease amendment for a commercial space at the Clackamas Corner property with American Property Management for the Justice Court. Total value is $1,657,614.50 for a 10-year term. Funding is through Justice Court fees and fines. No county general funds are involved. Joining us today is Justice of the Court Judge Karen Brisbane, Finance Director Elizabeth Comfort, Facilities Director Jeff Jorgensen. Go ahead, please.
This is Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director for Clackamas County. Good afternoon, or good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Today, we're bringing you a renewal of a 10-year contract for space for our Judge Brisbane's court, and she is here if you have specific questions, but it has been a long 10 years relationship at the Clackamas Town Center Mall, and we'd like to present with you a renewal of this contract for another 10 years for this space.
Correct. We've had, the original lease was in 2013, so it's actually through Christmas Day of this month, what the lease goes through. And then it'll be the next 10 years through 2033. Judge Brisbane, any comments?
Thank you. I appreciate the work that Finance has done to negotiate a new lease. We had a 20-year lease with a 10-year option. We're at the first 10 years. So a good goal, milepost.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Brisbane, for bringing this forward. I was a commissioner last time when this was established, and I might add that there were significant tenant improvements that you paid for through your wise stewardship of your funds that you saved to be able to do this. My next question, how has the landlord been in regards to any landlord repairs? And I'm sure that's a separate agreement that, Jeff, can you address that?
Actually, they've been very good. They're pretty responsive for all those issues. We've got a majority of the maintenance in that space, but they've been responsive. Again, kind of inside the space is the counties, HVAC, janitorial, all that. Outside the space, so the space itself is tax exempt, the space that we lease. Outside of that is where it comes into the contract additional costs when you're talking about parking lot, landscaping. And the contractor, American Property Management, is the selected management company. And they've
What
been,
about the roof?
they'll do that.
Is that a flat roof?
It is.
When's the last time it was replaced?
Before we took the building, it was been replaced. So we have no leaks in the building right now.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, good morning, Judge Brisbane. The people of the county are spending quite a bit of money on a new courthouse. Could you explain to us the benefit of having your justice court located in the Clackamas Town Center?
Well, the benefit is that we have free parking, we have easy access through multiple modes of transportation. The MAX line ends there, the bus transfer comes through there. Many of the people that appear in court live in the neighborhood and can even walk to the court for court appearances. So it's a great location.
Okay.
We provide services that the state circuit court doesn't provide, and we have a very quick timeline for processing cases. We hear a lot of small claims cases, which are disputes between community members. You have to have at least one resident in Clackamas County to file a case in our justice court, so there's a lot of local disputes that go through mediation and then may need a contested hearing in court. We hear all the violations for the for the county, from state police to the county sheriff to Canby Police when they're outside their city, all the local police agencies. We have 42 total agencies that file violations. And then we also hear the majority of the eviction proceedings in Clackamas County. So we provide a lot of local services for citizens.
Okay, well, good, thank you.
Commissioner West?
Some of my questions were just asked, so I guess I'll kind of frame mine in a different way. I'd love to know how, it sounds like we feel like the relationship is going well. Like 10 years is a long time, right? So we want to make sure we have a good relationship with our business partner. How is, and you just answered my question about how is the space working for you. Is the space really working for you well, or do you see any future expenses around necessary improvements? Or do you see this being a long-time viable solution for the services you provide to the public?
I'd say this is a long-term viable solution for the services. The facilities department in the county actually remodeled the space for us. It was 2 library spaces that were joined together with a ramp so it's accessible by wheelchair. And even the judge's bench in one of the courtrooms is accessible by wheelchair. So, but the county put that all in for us and remodeled it based on a plan that was done by the state court architects in Denver. And so we have a really good plan. It works really well. We have great technology through the support of our technology services, and we don't see any need for any remodeling improvements or anything like that. It's completely up to date, even though it's been there 10 years. Of course, we continue to work on our technology and improving that type of thing, but the facility itself is great.
Awesome, thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Been through this before, and I just appreciate the well-run operation provided by the Justice Court and the fact that this is completely supported by the fees and fines, that it's self-sustaining, and we appreciate that. So thanks for the good work and the service you provide.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gary, what is our action on this today?
Just to put forward to the Thursday business
We
meeting.
don't need a motion.
No.
Thank you very much. It'll be put forward to this Thursday's business meeting on consent agenda, and we appreciate your efforts very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more. So item 2, approval of a sublease agreement of parking lot spaces with American Property Management for the Justice Court. Total value is $1,539.96 for 1 year. Funding is through Justice Court fees and fines. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you. So we talked about free parking for our customers and clients that come to court. However, we do request 5 spaces that are paid for the staff, and that gives them reserved parking off to the side, which allows all the frontage and the easy access parking for the clients. We do ask for this on a yearly basis. We are working with the landlords, and so you'll see that we've actually, this may sound familiar, I think we were here last March asking for the same lease for 1 year, and so this is a renewal of a 1-year lease again for these 5 spaces.
Justice Court staff park in the Clackamas Town Center mall space. That's why we have the need for those, to pay for those 5 spaces.
It's kind of weird. Right? You have to admit.
Yeah.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move back to elected officials. These are requests from the Sheriff's Office. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Distracted Driving Enforcement Grant. Agreement value is $15,000 for 1 year with a $3,000 match. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation and $3,000 in budgeted county general funds. Nancy Artman is the finance manager of the Sheriff's Office. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Administrator Schmidt. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. This is the first of a handful of grants that we're bringing before you today with the Oregon Department of Transportation. The Distracted Driving Enforcement Grant is one that we have had for nearly 2 decades at this point, as with all the other grants. This provides for high visibility enforcement on particular event days. It also provides overtime compensation for individuals who are on patrol, who are providing services specific to this grant. Our match funds are actually straight time for citations issued that are related to the grant. So it doesn't cost us any more, and it provides compensation to help cover patrols that we would ordinarily do.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just curious, Nancy, is this implemented with the motor unit?
The motor unit, yes, does do primary enforcement on these grants.
Okay.
And so they are involved in each of these. Unfortunately, our traffic sergeant was going to be here today. He was detained, and he's the head of that unit. So if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to take them back to him.
Okay, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. The motor unit is actually the motorcycle unit, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So when you were here last, and also in the summertime, I made some requests for some information. I know you're the finance person, but essentially asked for some things like invoices, and I know we approved a contract with Washington County to service the motorcycles that are being phased out.
Yes.
I thought it was a lot of money for motorcycles that are being phased out, but it's now December, and I still have not had that request fulfilled. So if you could pass that on to leadership there.
Absolutely. Yes.
I may just actually be abstaining because I just thought the last couple of communications I saw don't give me a lot of comfort, maybe we're not communicating very well, but I want to just extend an olive branch and let you all know that if there's any misunderstandings, but I want to be cooperative. I think the public expects our governments and our elected leaders to work together cooperatively. Don't want to put you on the spot, I'm not, but I just want to just make that statement. So if I abstain today, I just want to make sure that the rank and file know that I support the good work that everyone's doing, including yourself. So this is not anything in which I am objecting, but I just think that it's December.
Yeah, understood.
And that request is made in the summertime, early summer.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. And I believe that Under Sheriff Morrison shared the information that was available to her. I will relay your request again.
Okay. And 13 years being up here, I've made similar requests, and you've all done a wonderful job and having the detail and have been in a timely fashion. So this is nothing unordinary. So it just seems that after all these months, it should be, if there's a communication breakdown, my phone number is out there, and I'm happy to share that. You all have it.
I appreciate the feedback, and I will relay that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So the connection is the fees or fines that are distributed to people who are, for lack of better, guilty of driving distracted on their cell phones or doing whatever. Those fines are then collected and assessed. They go before the Justice Court, correct?
For these grants, correct.
Yeah, and then the Justice Court reimburses the Sheriff's Department.
We used to receive by formula a share of Justice Court funds. That is no longer the case. They're distributed in a different manner through the general fund. So it's not a specific view where you can see a share going back to the sheriff's office.
So it's convoluted. I think I remember that now that you remind me of that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Driving Under the Influence of Intoxicants High Visibility Enforcement Grant. Agreement value is $15,000 for 1 year with a $3,000 match. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation and $3,000 in budgeted county general funds.
Thank you. This is the second grant from the Oregon Department of Transportation for traffic safety. This particular grant also pays for overtime enforcement, and the match is through straight time for individuals working in a similar manner but not working this grant. One of the interesting things about this grant is that it really promotes public awareness. So Sergeant Griffith has recently starred in a series of videos that have been out on our social media talking about traffic safety. And these events are specifically pushed during holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, around those events where there's increased traffic.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Pedestrian Safety Enforcement Grant. Agreement value is $5,000 for 1 year with a $1,000 match. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation and $1,000 in budgeted county general funds.
This grant is one that is specific to an event So the pedestrian safety grant, there is a decoy that is crossing crosswalks, and in real time, violators are pulled over and cited if they don't yield to the pedestrian.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And this is also used with the motor unit, correct?
Yes, the motor unit or deputies who would like to work it on overtime.
Well, these are great programs. I just want to say I do support the programs, and I just want to just forewarn that I chair that on Thursday I'll be asking that one or two or more of these be pulled for discussion, just to make my point that I made earlier. Unless personally, if there's a great opportunity to see the records request fulfilled, then I'd maybe just forego that.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Speed Enforcement Grant. Agreement value is $20,000 for 1 year with a $4,000 match. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation and $4,000 in budgeted county general funds.
Thank you. And if I just may address Commissioner Savis's last point, pardon me. ODOT has agreed to pay us retroactively as of October 1st with the assumption that this would be approved in December. So if they are not approved, and this is our last opportunity, I understand, for this year, we do risk some reimbursement. So I just wanted to note that for the group.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that we will move forward on this.
Thank you, Chair. This last grant, it follows the same formulary. It is worked on overtime. The match is straight time worked by deputies conducting similar work. And this one focuses specifically on speed infractions.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of an amendment extending duration and increasing funding to a contract with Mark 43, Inc. for records and property management software. Amendment value is $212,506.40 for 1 year. Agreement value is increased to $1,431,495.44 for 7.25 years. Funding is through budgeted county general funds.
Thank you. This allows us the opportunity to maintain our records management system for both our records department and our property room. This extension puts us under the threshold for total contract value. We will be working with procurement to conduct a request for proposals and follow that process as we're hitting that $1.5 million marker.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 6, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Water Environment Services for work crew services. Agreement value not to exceed $260,000 for 4 years. Funding through the Water Environment Services Surface Water Operating Fund. No county general funds are involved.
So this is the other half of the agreement that Mr. Geis presented to you earlier. This allows us to forego incarceration. It's an alternative to incarceration, which the average cost per a jail day is $119. So having individuals conduct their community service and provide the service through work crews is a great value to our office, and it makes them less justice involved for certain infractions.
Commissioner West.
So these are work crews that, like, when you're driving down the road and you see them doing specific, like in greenways and
Exactly.
and maintenance. So are they learning any specific? I mean, work ethic is an important skill, but like any specific skill that's transferable if once they're not incarcerated and can get gainfully employed. What's the more specific redemptive ability here, restoration ability within the inmate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these are folks that aren't inmates, so they've gone before the court system and they were ordered to community service.
Okay.
As an alternative. So they aren't really involved, quite frankly, for any length of time where they would have the opportunity to learn a skill set. The redemptive quality is that they're paying a debt to society for
their actions.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I understand that now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, so which judge in particular, can you tell me, who usually works with these kinds of assignments for its community service in our
That's a
system?
great question. I don't know the answer, but I'm happy to find out for you.
I'd like to find that out because
Absolutely.
I still think there may be a connection, and these are folks who evidently are doing community service, and if there's an opportunity to move them into actually, after some experience with Wes, it's always helpful. I know we do it when folks are released from jail, too. I think, don't we have a process to see if we can get people with our workforce board?
We do. We have a transitional services program that begins before they're released, and there's a robust program afterwards to help them with work skills and to make connections for a successful lifestyle.
Yeah, so we're already doing it for folks who are more at risk and who have been incarcerated. And these are folks that, okay, they did something wrong and not enough to get
Right.
incarcerated, but obviously if they do something like that, you might as well give them an opportunity to have access to a job if it's something they like to do. So it's just a crazy idea. We'll see.
It's a good
I'll
idea.
check into it. Okay, thanks.
Seeing no objections, thank you, Nancy, for coming
Thank you.
forward.
Thank you. Next, Technology Services. Item 1, approval of a board order authorizing a purchase order with Dell Microsoft LP for Microsoft licensing. Purchase order value is $3,617,053.02 for a 3-year term. Funding is through department cost allocations. No county general funds are involved, but I will say there's probably a small, minute portion used, but it's a majority not. It's mostly other funding sources that departments pay in cost allocations. Lanu Parapilli is the Director of Technology Services. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm here today to request your approval for this contract with Dell Marketing. And the contract is for the renewed use and expansion of our Microsoft products. We use Microsoft products quite extensively. Our server, desktop server, software, our email exchange, our Office products like Word and Excel, and database management, account management. So there is a lot of products that we use. Our current contract is expiring at the end of this month. So this one will be effective January 1st of 2024 and run through December 31st of 2026. It's a 3-year contract. The total contract value is $3,617,053.02. We pay annually roughly around $1.2 million, and that's based on a true-up. They do a true-up every year just to get the actual counts. Funding is through departmental cost allocations. No general funds are involved, and the agreement is through a cooperative agreement. I request your approval for this contract.
And just to clarify, Lanu, this is paid for department's cost allocations. You
Yes.
just said that.
Yes.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, County Administration. Item 1, approval of change order number 9 with Clackamas Progress Partners for the replacement county courthouse for relief event number 2, differing site condition, unknown underground utility. Change order value is $41,599, leaving credits of $622,181.35. Funding is through credits from previous change orders, which does include a small portion of budgeted county general funds. Andrew Naylor from County Counsel's Office will present. Go ahead, please, Andrew. We'll do these one at a time. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Under the courthouse contract, the project company is able to submit relief for certain events. One of those, a discovery of differing site conditions, so something in the soil that wasn't disclosed that they couldn't have reasonably expected. This change order and the one we'll discuss next are relief events based on differing site conditions. So the first one, they discovered an illegal sewer line connected to a housing authority property. So this is the change order financial relief for that discovery. And we've worked with our consultants, and we believe this is a reasonable resolution of this relief claim.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, next.
Item 2, approval of change order number 12 with Clackamas Progress Partners for the replacement county courthouse for relief event number 1, discovery of differing site conditions. Change order value is $134,360.10, leaving credits of $487,821.25. Funding through credits from previous change orders, which does include a small portion of budgeted county general funds.
Commissioner, same situation. They discovered new things, unexpected utilities, undisclosed utilities. They discovered soil conditions that didn't match the original geotechnical report. Relief Event 1 reflects this sort of collection of claims. And again, we worked with our consultants, we negotiated project company, we believe this is a reasonable resolution of Relief Event 1.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just a comment overall. I just have a concern. I know that our legal counsel's office is going through that, and Nancy Bush has been doing a great job of trying to navigate some of these things that are unexpected. I just want to make sure that we are doing our very best on behalf of our constituents to make sure that each of us on this agreement for the courthouse are living up to our end of the bargain, and that we are not incurring any more cost or cost overruns than we should. And I just want to just convey that, as I understand it, that why we might be approving some of these here today, that they're not necessarily solved or resolved. And that I think it's important that we make sure that we do our due diligence and make sure that overruns are resolved in the most equitable way possible. But we still have a responsibility to do our best to fulfill the responsibilities we have when it comes to how we honor the contract, how they honor the contract, and our financial obligations as such that protects the taxpayers in this regard. Knowing that we have a very, very tight budget as a result of the courthouse, that there's not much money to throw around, so every dollar here matters, but I'm just going to be adamant that we look very closely at these going forward. And that this is not, to me, as I understand it, this is not an approval that we are going to be paying this, but that we could have a change order up to that amount. So I understand it's complicated, but I just wanted to just make that statement that I, at least as one person here, will be looking at this very closely.
If I may, Commissioner, this one will be resolved in its entirety. This is Relief Event 2, so we did negotiate with them. I think their original claim was in the $200,000 range, so we worked with the project company back and forth and disputed some things, agreed on some things, so this will fully resolve it, and we will pay this one. I think you're referring to...
Well, I understand it's a package, so
Okay.
I'm speaking in context of all of them, so,
Understood.
Based on prior conversations.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to make an interesting comment. Thank you, Commissioner Savas, because I think you're making great points. So I love the fact that I've been here long enough when relief events used to be just called change orders. Okay. And, I find it interesting that contract language has changed, because I still can't stop thinking about them, about change orders. And I will say that I can venture to say that there's probably not a commissioner in the state that loves change orders at all. We don't like surprises. We like to kind of stick to what we're told. We do understand that there are other things that happen that have to be addressed with this. And can you explain to me, why did they change the name? And there, it sounds to me like there is money set aside that we have in the contract agreement for these kinds of things. Is that true?
So
Or, for the public, I'd even like to know, yeah.
So we do, yeah, they made it more complicated. So you start with a relief event to get to a change order.
Okay,
So the
got
change
it.
order is still there, and we still cringe
All
when we
right,
see them.
okay, good.
And so we have credits available from prior change orders that I believe were reductions in scope that resulted
Okay.
in a credit to the county. And so we're able to use those credits to pay for certain things like this.
Okay, so what you're really saying is that there have been efficiencies made, and there's like a pot of money where they didn't spend as much as they thought they were going to spend, but we're holding those dollars in escrow in order to, if we do have what I'm going to just call a change order, that money is being used for that. Am I understanding that correctly?
I believe so. I believe
right.
it's more of a credit, not funds in escrow, and I'm not sure if.
It's more of a credit? What's the difference? Explain.
It says right in here.
I know, I just want to clarify for the public, but.
I think your conversations need to do on the next item that's not listed in our pamphlet. Is that correct, Gary?
Correct, yes.
See no objection to this particular one. Thank you.
All right, I am adding item number 3. It is not posted online. It will be posted shortly. You had a discussion in executive session, which you have authorized to discuss publicly. Because this is your last week of business for the calendar year, we're going to put this on this week's agenda, should you agree, and I'll read it. But it will be posted later. It is not posted now. Approval, this is item 3, approval of change order number 13 with Clackamas Progress Partners for the Replacement County Courthouse for relief event number 3. governmental approvals, Type 2 staff report, and notice of decision with conditions of approval. Relief event number 3 is in respect to multiple improvements to Highfield Court that are required under the Title II land use permit issued by Oregon City as part of the Clackamas County Courthouse project. The county disputes the dollar amount, so we are not identifying a dollar amount today, but we're seeking your approval to begin the construction. Andrew, go ahead.
That was a good summary, Gary. So we have our Type 2 land use permit. Oregon City put conditions in there that we have to satisfy in order to achieve occupation for the courthouse. One of those is improvements to Highfield Court, the neighborhood adjacent to the courthouse. We believe this is the project company's responsibility to handle, to pay for. They dispute that. They say it's off-site. It's the county's obligation. In order to avoid a delay, we've agreed that project company, you do the work. We'll fight about who's responsible for paying after the fact. This change order will reflect that. When we eventually have it finalized, we're still negotiating some of the language with the project company to ensure that our claims are reserved. It will essentially say that. Parties reserve their claim, project company's going to do the work. We will negotiate in good faith after the fact, and if necessary, we will have to litigate if we don't agree.
Yeah, and as I said, I wish it didn't happen that way because we don't like these kinds of surprises, but it is what it is. And I know all of us on this commission will do our due diligence in terms of public dollars.
Can you explain to me the language in the existing contract that allows us to dispute this?
The contract puts the responsibility for all government permitting on the project company to handle.
Now, what is that called again?
The government permitting,
Yes, outside events that come in. What is that called? You use that.
Relief event.
it's a relief event, and so they are claiming a relief event based on the government permitting. We're
It's called
saying,
something else in contract language that we previously discussed, but that's okay. Yes, and this is, the City of Oregon City wants some improvements done that has been in their master plan for many years. So they see an opportunity through Clackamas County with the construction of a new courthouse, thinking that they need something from us. They're already getting an extraordinary amount of building permit fees and SDCs through transportation and other facilities. I just want to make that known. It's not anything unforeseen necessarily on the part of the construction company and/or Clackamas County. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, if it's not obvious, I just want to make it very obvious that my comments I made with these 3 change orders, if you will, or relief events, that my comments related to, especially the 3rd one, but all of them in context, and frankly, more to come, I'm sure, right? We're just beginning this project, so to speak, so I'm just concerned that we only have so many resources, so thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Seeing no objections, thank you.
All right, thank you. And we'll post this online as soon as we can this morning, the staff report and what I just read. All right, thank you. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment extending the duration and increasing funding of a revenue intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County Fire District Number 1 for medical direction. Amendment value is $72,000 for 1 year. Agreement value increased to $216,000 for 3 years. Funding is through Clackamas Fire District Number 1. No county general funds are involved. Denise Swanson and Adam Brown, both Deputy Directors of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. Denise Swanson, Deputy Director. So this amendment provides public health with funding to provide medical direction services to Clackamas County Fire District 1, including developing a program to ensure that they meet clinical state requirements and performance standards, and that the first responders meet the required protocols for providing EMS care and licensure in Oregon. So you've seen this one before. This is just an update for 1 more year.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of a revenue healthcare services contract with Care Oregon for enhanced transitions of care. Contract value is $350,000 for 11 months. Funding is through Care Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
So the revenue provided by this contract will support our health centers' clinic providers in improving the transition of care for patients who are medically complex with co-occurring behavioral health disorders as they transition from one level of care to another. So for instance, this is particularly important if a client is moving from a healthcare facility such as a hospital into outpatient setting. So this kind of time between that transition is recognized as a high-risk activity, and when not effectively managed, can result in greater rates of mental health-related rehospitalizations.
Commissioner West.
Yeah, I just had a conversation, I think, about this with Kaiser. So am I understanding that we have a patient who is a vulnerable population, they're being discharged from Sunnyside Kaiser hypothetically, they still have extensive wounds on their legs, maybe are unstable diabetic, or a whole host of comorbidities and issues, and negative health determined outcomes. We've always had that problem, that person being released into unstable housing to the point where they could go septic, go back in the ED in this cycle, right? So so is this providing them like an apartment housing? Like where are they going? I'm not understanding where the transition's happening for these patients.
So this is through health centers, so it isn't necessarily people who are homeless or housing challenged. It's about patients that are transitioning from the inpatient to the outpatient, and really about helping coordinate that care, because often, as you know, the providers that are now their outpatient provider doesn't know everything that happened in the hospital, so it's really providing that care.
Is that nursing-led?
What's that?
Is that nursing-led? Is that
I
care
don't
coordination?
know. I can find out through the health centers.
Okay.
But it's really working directly with our health center providers to help people coming out of inpatient facilities.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Seeing no objections.
Thank you.
Item 3, approval of a board order authorizing a purchase order with Robert Half International for temporary employee services for financial reporting, accounting, and procurement services. Purchase order value is $122,393.30 for 6 months. Funding is through Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
So as part of Public Health's Modernization Workforce Development Program, we need some temporary workers to provide financial reporting, accounting, and procurement services while we hire up to full-time FTEs.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
I actually have one. So it's more of a technical question. It's really not about the subject matter, but the purchase order, the threshold amount that anything that a director has, in this case, is above that amount, correct?
If I understand you correctly, a director has authority to sign up to $150,000. Anything higher goes before the Board of Commissioners.
Right. And my point being that we have a number of things that we approve that are below the threshold amount, because that's our policy, right? I just want to make that statement. It's not about H3S or not about this one, but in one of the upcoming items, I want to just point that out while I have a purchase order type agenda item that I'll speak to a little bit later. Thank you. No alarms.
Certainly for intergovernmental agreements, anything over $5,000 must be signed by the board. There's state and federal laws, there's various intricacies. So everything we bring to you is because it has to come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. No objections?
All right. Item 4, approval of a revenue grant agreement with the National Association of County and City Health Officials for the Partnering for Vaccine Equity Project. Total value is $150,000 for 12 months. Funding is through the National Association of County and City Health Officials. No county general funds are involved.
So this one's pretty exciting because our public health was one of only 18 local health departments across the entire nation to receive this grant award. So that's awesome. And the PAVE project supports local public health departments in addressing vaccine hesitancy, engaging community stakeholders, strengthening relationships between providers and the community to increase vaccine confidence and access opportunities. And then as part of the grant, we also get to collaborate with the other awardees on lessons learned and new strategies. So it creates a collaborative process for all those involved.
Is there any matching funds on the county's part for this?
No county general funds, I don't know. I'm sure public health probably, even in the staff timing alone, is part of the work.
So this is for vaccine hesitancy.
Yes.
So how do you identify people who have vaccine hesitancy?
So I happen to know what we're going to be doing with the dollars. So we're going to conduct focus groups and surveys to understand what the barriers to vaccine access is, particularly in the Latinx population. And work with those populations. We'll have 5 different vaccination clinics at farms and low-income housing complexes and launch a multilingual regional vaccine promotion campaign.
And so what you're saying is people who have decided that maybe they should not take a vaccine, you're going to try to convince them otherwise.
Do some education, exactly.
And don't you believe that vaccines should be an individual choice?
Well, I think part of public health work is to do vaccine work as part of their
So if
work.
you're going into facilities where these people are dependent for living off the streets in a publicly paid facility, which it sounds like this is, and you're in health clinics where people go in for health, where it's publicly paid, and they say, I don't want a vaccine, but you're going to say, oh, you should have a vaccine. They may unwittingly agree to have a vaccine because you're telling them they should have one. Now, I'm very sensitive about vaccine choice. My husband went to the doctor, and we have good medical insurance, obviously, and the doctor says, you need to have a flu shot and another shot. And he says, okay, fine. Doctor, can you guarantee me that when I go in to have these vaccines, that you're not also going to inject me with a COVID vaccine? And you know what the doctor said? No, I cannot guarantee that. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding the COVID vaccines. And it sounds like the health department, you're just going to go out. And I think it's a very sensitive topic that when you're having these, quote, educational seminars where people, sounds like to me, of low income are so dependent upon the government to help them through these rough spots, that you may be trying to convince them something that they may question. The lights, Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning. I know that many of our newly arrived immigrants from Eastern Europe and many of our immigrants who are becoming American citizens from Latin and South America are a little bit afraid of vaccinations because of history and maybe the areas they came from. But isn't this effort mostly focused on our children? Because is it not true that for our K-12 students, there are some required vaccinations such as polio vaccine and a few others? I remember when my boys were little, they had their little vaccination cards that they had to have for school. So isn't that what this is, an effort to overcome, is an educational thing to overcome some lack of knowledge about some of these vaccines? Some of the places, I think polio vaccine is almost a universal vaccine. Even in Zimbabwe, I think they're required to get a polio vaccine. But isn't this geared mostly towards educating parents about the need for childhood vaccinations?
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. So I don't know the specifics of what vaccines they're talking about, but it is very specifically about talking to people about what their hesitancy is towards getting vaccines. So whether that is for the polio or for COVID or flu shots, I'm not sure, but I can certainly bring that information back to you.
Yeah, I would think that COVID would be the last thing that they'd be really concerned about in this particular effort.
Well, in previous to the COVID pandemic, we were having issues around vaccine hesitancy in exactly the types of vaccines that you're talking about with children, as we know.
Well, wasn't it the first round of the COVID shot in Clackamas County was in the 70 percentile category, correct? The second round, however, dipped almost into single digits, if I'm recalling the information right. But the public health officials aren't here to answer that, and maybe they can enlighten me on that too. Commissioner West.
I'm going to totally put my nursing hat on here. It's unfortunate that one of the greatest miracles in public health that saved countless lives, I don't know if we have an effort that has been more beneficial to all of human flourishing than modern vaccination. The evidence is overwhelming. It's until COVID and how partisan that conversation become, it was almost irrefutable. And that's not to say that some people don't have reactions or there aren't medical issues that can arise rarely, but the overall benefit to people's ability to rise out of poverty, to not have disease, to not be maimed by their disease, to not go blind, to not be crippled, to not die, was because of great innovation in vaccination. So I want to make sure that we're talking about this program and not all this stuff. When I talked to my patients, I said, let's quiet the noise and let's focus on you, and then let me help just coach you. Let me just walk with you as a nurse. Let's walk together, and then you have the right to make decisions, and I'm going to build trust with you, and I'm not going to judge you. You have that right to make that choice. And I want to make sure that, I want to know who's having these conversations with populations that have all kinds of reasons why they may not have the education or the trust to maybe understand what's available to them to be healthier and to avoid disease. Is it a bureaucrat or is it a nurse? Right? Like these things matter in how we deliver these conversations with people, because we have to get to a point to where we're talking as individuals to one another and tailor the conversation and coach people through this process. So I'm more concerned about the process and who has the conversation and what vaccinations are we talking about, and then how is that information being delivered is much more consequential to me than some of the periphery stuff that we all are often dealing with, the noise, I'll call it. That's my questions to you.
We'll certainly bring that back to you. Thank you.
Is there a deadline for this grant?
I'm sure, Gary, it could, well, we're.
I think you need to pull it till January.
I think so. I think we can do
I
that.
think we're going to
Yep.
pull this till
Okay.
January. I have a lot of questions about the approach on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader?
Well, I really liked what Commissioner West said about the approach. And I guess I see public health as an education group. We are lucky to have a qualified, a nurse, and I'm assuming, are there any public health nurses involved with the conversation as you move forward? Or you haven't gotten that far yet? In other words, under the umbrella of our public health, are we going to have those professionals involved in conversations?
Yes.
Okay, so that answers one thing. We are going to have that. And this, from my perspective, this isn't about coercion, it's about education. Okay, I don't see it as saying you have to get a vaccine. And Tootie, don't get annoyed with me, but I'll give you a little vaccine. Okay, first vaccine was smallpox, 1796. 1940s, we basically had diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, then smallpox. Late 50s, that was our era. We had the oral polio vaccine. I actually got a shot, but, then they gave us sugar cubes, I guess. Then recommended vaccines were diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, smallpox, and polio was huge, because I remember, again, we were in danger of polio, and I remember the outbreak in the early 60s that we had to do, where we were really starting to get the polio vaccines. Then there was measles, mumps, and rubella. And then recommended is DTP, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, smallpox, polio, measles, mumps, and rubella. And then in the 1970s, again, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine was combined into MMR. Smallpox was declared eradicated, and use of small vaccine was discontinued in 1972. And then pretty much we had that same, from 1985 to 1994, we had Haemophilus influenza type B, so we're seeing that movement into that. And 94, 95, again, hepatitis B was included in this whole group. And so what I'm saying is there's a history of our public health departments educating people about these vaccines. And back in the day, I think there was more trust in government entities. I think that's part of the problem, in a way, that, they are, public health is educators. It's not meant to be coercive. And I remember as a young mother in Canby, there were even friends I had then that refused to give their kids diphtheria, measles, mumps, and rubella. And I've never agreed with that. My kids have all been fully vaccinated, and I've lost count of the COVID vaccines I've had in my left arm. And there is a danger with every vaccine, but that's part of the public health piece. There always is going to be a risk with whatever you do with this, and it's a personal choice to take that risk. So I don't see it in this way, taking personal choice. I just see it as, okay, there's these vaccines, and we have a long history. There is a difference. The woman who worked with the messenger RNA vaccine, framework just received a Nobel Prize in medicine. I don't remember her name. I see it, but so people are concerned because it seems to be a different. They were just as concerned about back in the 18th century with cowpox, and quite frankly, and people were reluctant to do that then if you look at the history of vaccines. So I don't want to take any more time up, but I just should say, put this into the larger context of public health, not coercion, and we're in a time now where there's a lot of distrust out there. I, for one, if you don't want to get a COVID vaccine, that's fine with me, really. I think we all feel that way. I don't want to force anybody into a vaccine. But I think it's important to make it on a decision of the science knowledge that's out there. And why are people feeling afraid? Is it because they don't understand the new mRNA vaccine delivery system? We don't know that. So I also like the fact it's from a National Association of Public Health Officials. That's got to tell you something here. So anyway, enough. Sorry, I sucked up a little air there.
Thank you for your education, Commissioner Schrader. I am very much aware of those previous vaccines, and I've probably had them all. But I think that you're missing what the point I'm trying to make, and I think you people understand it. Vaccine injury is very real, and that's never discussed because we pretend like it doesn't happen. And there are after effects from the COVID vaccine. And I'm not going to talk about those today, but not every person will sustain a vaccine injury because either your makeup or the inconsistency of the vaccines. And all the vaccines, Commissioner Schrader, that you mentioned took probably a decade to get to market. And they were tested, and they were tested, and they were tested. When it comes to the COVID vax, it was put out within like 6 months, and there was no human testing hardly done on it. That is my issue, that the COVID vaccine should be a choice. And you made the statement that you don't think people understand the mRNA. Oh, I think they understand the altering your genome within your body with the mRNA. I think they understand it very well.
It's not, that's not.
Would you please not interrupt me?
I'm sorry.
I didn't interrupt you. I was very patient.
Okay, thank you, but.
I do think they understand changing your genome within the body, because there are vaccine injuries, and we all have witnessed them, whether we will attribute it to the vaccine or not. This is a broader discussion on this. We have 2 more commissioners in the queue, Commissioner Savas and then Commissioner West.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to, I see this as educational, especially from the aspect of bilingual, multi-languages. And so, you know, you may have heard this story before, but I think for this particular one, recognizing that some people can't speak English or understand, and these things sometimes are intimidating if you're going to get a shot, and regardless of what age you are, if you're from a different country, don't understand what we're doing. So I just look at this as educational, it's not a mandate. And I say that because, you know, my family, were escaping the mass genocide in Turkey and in the early 1900s, came here right around the same time the 1918 Spanish flu broke out with that pandemic. And very similar conversations were taking place. And we didn't have that luxury. At least in my family, I had one family member of my 4 grandparents that came here during that time that spoke English. And she was the deliverer of the message, even though she was very young at that point in time. But I just want to say that to me, this is about educational to people who don't really have, at least part of this, who don't really have that ability to communicate as easily as the rest of us.
I would agree, Commissioner Savas. if it was education, they haven't been able to answer these questions, and they can come back and answer all the questions that were posed by the board today. Commissioner West.
Wow. I'm totally want to make it clear that I intend on voting for this. I don't have a problem with this program. I want to know more about it and provide just good oversight and make sure that we're getting good care. I think a lot of things in healthcare right now, unfortunately, are too polarized when all of us humans need good healthcare and we need trusted resources. And it's unfortunate that the public health trust, for a variety of reasons, which we're not going to solve in Clackamas County, have been completely eroded. And there's a lot of and so as a healthcare provider, I just want to rebuild trust again. And so I just want to see how this program can help do that.
Yep.
That's where, and so I am supporting this. However we decide to move it forward or vote for today, I am
We're going to pull
supporting
it
it.
today, and we're going to bring it back next month. Let Gary know if there's a deadline for this application, okay?
Will do. And we'll send you information in writing as well as be ready to discuss next month.
Yep. Thank you. Gary, what's next?
All right, thank you. Next, item 5, approval of an amendment to increase funding and extend the term of the revenue grant agreement with the State of Oregon's Housing and Community Services Department for programs related to the governor's state of emergency due to homelessness. The amendment value is $980,000 for 6 months. The total agreement value is increased to $5,415,294 for 18 months. Funding is through the state of Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Good morning, Adam Brown, Deputy Director. This amendment adds $980,000 to the emergency order on homelessness grant agreement, allowing us to increase our rapid rehousing goal from 130 households to 170 households. And for context here, in August, the state rebalanced funding allocations in an effort to expedite progress towards the statewide goals. It inquired with jurisdictions about whether they could take on additional funding to achieve additional outcomes beyond those made possible with the additional funding amounts. Our cohort of service providers, led by Clackamas Women's Services, indicated capacity to serve more than the additional goal. We were a star at that point in raising our hand and saying we want to do more. And so we told the state as much, and that resulted in this additional allocation. And the next agenda item incorporates this funding into the CWS agreement. But I just want to take a minute to talk about what this means for us as Clackamas County and why our success in this program will live on into the future. So we're going to achieve the goal of placing 170 households by January 10th, 2024. And this was a one-time only allocation. Rapid rehousing, right? Get folks off the streets and into housing as quickly as we can. We've put a priority on serving our rural households, knowing that we have a lot of resources within our urban growth boundary with the Supportive Housing Services Measure funds. So when the EO funds became available, we said, this is a huge opportunity for us to close the gap in our rural communities. We targeted this in our outreach allocation to increasing access to resources for rural households. So now we're going to achieve this goal. And like I said, it was a one-time allocation. And we had to trust when we built this programming that the state would not have us rehousing very vulnerable households with a bridge to nowhere. So this was funding for about 12 months of rent assistance. Now, in Senate Bill 5511, the state has allocated ongoing resources to develop a long-term rent assistance program that will give Clackamas County one-to-one vouchers that tie back to the capacity that we succeeded in here in the one-time allocation. So just on Friday, I got the draft allocation from the state that confirms as much, that the draft allocation will give us $5 million in ongoing funding to sustain housing for voucher capacity of 170. This is a game changer for us, for our rural communities, and it will be informed by our ongoing efforts to engage our rural communities, do our rural area strategic plan, and now here with this allocation, we'll have voucher capacity to basically permanently house 170 rural households. This is a huge win for us as a community. This has been hard work, but our service providers have really stepped up. They built the programming, built it quickly. They built it in faith that this was something we could sustain into the future, and now we see it moving in that direction.
That's wonderful, Adam. What rural communities will be served by this money?
Our biggest rural communities are Sandy, Malala, and Estacada.
Good.
And we're in active conversations with each of them right now about city-led homeless services infrastructure. We know that our rural needs are different than our urban needs, and that the systems and structures we put in place need to look different for each community. We're committed to partnership. I'm going to Sandy on Thursday for a discussion with the city manager about what that looks like there. We've been to Malala. So this is really exciting for us. We're making a lot of progress.
And these three cities have been receptive to receiving this money?
They've been receptive to the program capacity, right? So this money isn't going to them. It's
I know,
allocated
I
to
know
our,
it's-
yeah, but yes. And they're seeing the fruits of this there. We're hearing from our law enforcement partners there and others. And Ant Farm has been a huge leader in this. So I think they're certainly seeing the benefits.
Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack in our rural communities. I know I've been trying for a very long time. Commissioner West.
Bravo. Like, this is awesome. I am so proud of this county. I just want to know if other counties didn't necessarily get funds because they weren't ready to meet the demand.
Yeah, there were reallocations, right? So out of the gate, 100% of the funds were allocated out to counties. And
Some were
then-
clawed back.
And some were clawed back. And we said, we're here for it.
We'll take, if that county can't do it, then we'll take it because we can. Is that kind of the position we put ourselves in?
Yeah, and our program leadership, me and Vahid primarily, sort of were looking to the future and said, hey, we need to seize this opportunity now because this is going to feed into the ongoing funding formula. So let's capitalize on it. And that's where it's showing up. So when this email came through on Friday, I opened it up and I was like, dang, there it is. This is basically permanent voucher capacity.
So let me just paint the picture because you're being kind of modest. So I get elected. I'm finishing my first year as an elected. Right during this time, this is the conversation. We're talking about turnkey, but even outside of the metro area, Malala, Estacada, they were really feeling real severe pressures with this population. You would drive out there at night, you would see people roaming the streets, you would see people in the parks. They were really struggling with this population in the rural communities not having their needs met. Very angry city council meetings, would go to these city council meetings, they would go on for hours. People were just angry and feeling like they weren't getting the support they needed and the support that they had. We tried to make that work, which was already in place, but it didn't happen that way, right? Like we had a warming shelter. It wasn't working with the community for whatever reason. And sadly, at that time it was tough to have to maybe figure out a new direction quickly. We've shown ourselves to be competent. And I just was at a C4 meeting with these mayors. I think Commissioner Savas was there. And one of the things that they wanted to talk about was how excited they were about the improvement in just a few months they're seeing in their communities and how they can feel the difference. And they're excited that their neighbors are getting help. Like it is like night and day, like success. And so I am like, this is what we're here to do. This is awesome. And I can I remember I would call, like, oh my gosh, there's this, you wouldn't feel safe in parts of Malala. This is awesome. This is really cool stuff and good job. I'm bravo, and I'm glad that the state recognized that Clackamas County is one of the premier leaders here on this issue, and we're doing good stuff, and they decided to award us with more resources because we've shown everybody we can handle the workload. So thank you. Good job. This is excellent.
Thank you,
Yes, as a codicil to that, I remember the phone call from the governor saying you're going to get more money. Oh, and we're taking that in Multnomah County because they can't seem to spend it. Can you spend it? And I says, absolutely. I remember that day well. Commissioner Scholl.
Good morning, Mr. Brown. Two questions. Number one, you mentioned that you wanted to increase the number of house families from 130 to 170 by early January. So question one, is your outreach navigation adequate to identify those families? And two, do you have the housing units or space identified to provide for those families?
Yeah, Commissioner Scholl, that's two really, really good questions. So the funding allocation decision was made in September. We're just now getting around to kind of the bureaucratic cleanup of amending the agreement. So we've known for months that we're stretching this goal. So to answer that question, yes, like we have the program capacity. And yes, it is connected to the outreach programming that Ant Farm is leading in the rural community. So we meet twice a month with the whole group that's working on this. And Ant Farm, Clackamas Women's Services, our other service providers are talking all the time about ushering these households to the rapid rehousing opportunity. And then to your question about capacity, we in Clackamas County have not had a shortage of rental units in the community that we're able to source to house people. The primary barrier has been more things like screening criteria into those units, knowing that a lot of these folks are people who maybe have been homeless for a long time. They got a lot of barriers to housing. So we have a landlord partnership program that's part of our SHS-funded Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program. And that landlord partnership program has led to connections with agencies like Multifamily Northwest, for example, which represents 270,000 owned units in the Pacific Northwest. So we've been trying to work upstream and make housing navigation not something that you do in the moment on one-off call basis, but making sure that globally we've identified enough units in the community so that we're quickly getting people access to housing.
Yeah. Well, good. That's good news. Thank you very much.
Seeing no further comments, no objections, thank you.
Item 6, approval of an amendment expanding the scope of work and increasing the value of a personal services contract with Clackamas Women's Services for homeless services. The amendment value is $1,640,396. Total contract value is increased to $9,182,559 for 18 months. Funding is through State of Oregon Emergency Order Grant Funds and Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure Funds. No county general funds are involved.
So thank you. Again, this agreement with Clackamas Women's Services does two things. It incorporates that $980,000 of emergency order funding because CWS is administering that programming on our behalf. And then it also adds $660,000 for eviction prevention services funded by Supportive Housing Services Measure funds with capacity to serve up to 100 households per year. And just for a little bit of context, our coordinated housing access system, you know that the primary front door to our homeless services system is through the county CHA system, right? We have a little bit of a separate path for households that are experiencing domestic violence due to safety and security concerns. CWS administers that portion of our housing access system. So this allocation in particular is to buy that program capacity for CWS to do eviction prevention services for households experiencing domestic violence.
Commissioner Shaw.
Yes. How many at the Clackamas Women's Services Center? How many children do we have there now? And do we have something going on to make sure that Santa Claus visits that center in the next couple of weeks?
That's a great question, and I can look into it.
Well, if you need to make sure Santa Claus goes there, let me know, because I know who to call.
You got it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, objections? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of a cooperative service agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture for the purposes of compliance with Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Total value is $15,000 for 1 year. Funding through the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. There is a Migratory Bird Treaty Act that I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but there is. And essentially, when we do various projects in and around Clackamas County, some of those projects require us, based off the time of the year, location of the projects, to have them independently inspected. And essentially, this contract allows us to call for these services on a project-by-project basis. These dollars are incorporated if there's an analysis expected on a certain project. They are incorporated into the budget for the project, so they are assumed costs associated with it. But again, the whole entire contract is for $15,000 over the life of the contract for 2024.
So it's not the DTD Air Force?
No. It's not a drone force. It's not. It's hey, there's a I'm not making light of it, but there's a bird right there. We've got to watch that bird, and here's when we can cut and things like that. So, anyway, the steps that we go through.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hearing no objections?
Item 2, approval of a State of Oregon County Fairgrounds Capital Improvements Grant Agreement with the Oregon Business Development Department toward construction of the new county fair multipurpose building. Grant value is $277,777. Funding is through Business Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Essentially, the Fair and Event Center has been actively looking for various grants to assist in the construction of their new multipurpose building construction project. They actively look to secure this grant. We're successful. Essentially, this is a grant that was awarded in equal amounts across all 36 counties, including the state fairgrounds. And it's funded through the state sale of state lottery bonds by the state of Oregon. Essentially, your approval will authorize our acceptance of these dollars and directing them towards that specific use.
Did I hear this right? This is actually a State of Oregon money, which we knew about. Did you say OBI? Is it administering it or OBDD?
It's a Business Oregon grant.
That's what I thought.
It's state funded through the lottery money. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I mean, and I'll be honest, we had some miscommunications with the state fairgrounds. They got a little ahead of cart got ahead of the horse a little bit, and so we basically had to put some pause on that. We were able to work collaboratively with the state. They said, hey, you know what, we'll take the time that you need to make sure that this entity gets these funds, and they've been very collaborative in that effort.
Good. Seeing no objections. Thank you, Dan.
Item 3, approval of a board order authorizing a purchase order with Roberson Motors for the purchase of 12 2024 Dodge Pursuit all-wheel drive Durangos for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office through a State of Oregon cooperative contract. Total value is $524,733.60. Funding through budgeted county general funds.
Essentially, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office has made the request that Clackamas County Fleet Services purchase the 12 Durangos the county administrator just referenced. Approval of the purchase is being requested under the local contract review board rules associated with cooperative procurement. Essentially, I can inform the board that in discussions with CCO representation and review and confirmation from their budget, these expenditures were contemplated in the adoption and appropriations in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. They are also, I've been informed, spread across general operations, the enhanced law enforcement district, and the sheriff's levy. Those costs will be divided at different levels, but it will be spread throughout all those various funding sources the sheriff's has. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So the total cost is $524,733.12, and that's about $43,700 per vehicle. And then the cost to equip it is how much?
The cost of the equipment is the next topic that we'll be discussing about, how to basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Accoutrements, that's not the word. The lights and the
equipment,
accessories
all
you
the
need for
stuff.
safety vehicles. Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
we need all that stuff for
That's
safety.
basically in a separate discussion, which
Right.
is the next item up here,
Thank you
which,
very much.
which, to answer your question, is
We
$196,000.
can answer that in the next discussion. Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, with regard to this and the next item, whenever we do this on behalf of CCSO, it's by purchase order, right? For the most part, all these transactions that go through fleet.
So they have essentially they have oh my gosh, what's the term I'm looking for? They have an acquisition form basically through a PO, and then as the county administrator talked to you, there's various levels of authorization for that signature authority. When they head over the $150,000 amount, those then basically come to the board for consideration. So the one in front of you today, like we discussed, is $524,000. And there's specificity to the formula. I can let you know what that is.
Right. And I've just looking over some of the forms, and it looks to me, again, we've approved things below that threshold of $150,000 for various different aspects, and I don't know exactly how that's done. So, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I just want to mention that when this came up with regard to the contract with Washington County for the motorcycle services, I had asked some questions, and one of those questions I later later asked was, when did the board approve the purchase of $100-some-odd-thousand for the new motorcycles that we are not really aware of? So I'm still trying to understand what that threshold amount is with regard to a purchase order, because some of these here today are well below that $150,000 threshold. So an item to be discussed possibly on Thursday. So thank you.
What jumps out to me is that we're buying these through Robinson Motors with a cooperative contract with the state of Oregon. That's new?
Well,
That's new? Because in the past, as I remember, we used another vendor in Salem.
yes.
But this says Robertson Motors. Is it the same? Is it different?
Well, we use cooperative contracts. Okay.
Nancy, would you come forward and help me with this, please?
I think the state has a purchase, on vehicles, they have a purchase, I forgot what that name was, but they have
Before, when this came through, Paul, there was a different company that was brought forward, and it wasn't Robertson, but maybe something has changed.
So Chair, at the time, Nancy Artman for the record, Sheriff's Finance Manager. At the time of negotiation, our fleet services sought to find a vendor that could meet our needs and with a particular vehicle. So we aren't going with our historical vendor, but the process is the same. Going through a cooperative agreement that's already been negotiated. So we're assuring that all the procurement laws and obligations have been
Well,
met.
I know we're going through procurement laws. That's not in question. It's just the vendor that we're using is different than historically speaking.
Correct.
Is it because of a supply issue?
Correct.
All right, that's all I needed to know. Thank you very much. Seeing no objections.
All right, item 4, approval of a board order authorizing a purchase order with McLaughlin and Eardley Group, doing business as Sirenet.com for the purchase of patrol vehicle equipment through a City of Beaverton cooperative contract. Total value is $196,308.39. Funding through budgeted county general funds.
Essentially, this is the supporting accoutrements and safety equipment associated with setting up these vehicles for their own purposes. Essentially, this contract was approved, was basically being requested under local contracting review rules for cooperative agreements. The purchases were made using a City of Beaverton contract, essentially through McLaughlin and Eardley Group for emergency lighting and related equipment for the sheriff's fleet vehicles.
That puts the total cost of these Durangos at $60,300 approximately. More could be coming. Jenna Morrison has signed this on behalf of the sheriff.
With respect, you should reject it because you were really clear in your direction, commissioners, so.
I think we're
Sorry.
going to bring this back after the first of the year with the proper signature.
I'm sorry, this is Dan Johnson. Forgive me. This is a DTD request.
We essentially, the request has been made from Fleet Services,
Well,
which
I'm
is a
looking at
part
the
of
memo on page 3. The memo is from the sheriff with Jenna Morrison's signature on it. Now, who's doing what here?
Well, I mean, Fleet Services acts as a agent for the sheriff's office and is basically essentially assumes a certain quality assurance for all vehicle purchases throughout the
That's
county.
not the question I've asked, and you know that, Dan. Gary, what are we going to do on this?
I would request going forward because it's a DTD request. It is budgeted.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Item 5, approval of a personal services contract with Consor North America for engineering design services for the 2024 transportation maintenance paving projects. Total contract value is $750,213. Funding through funding through State House Bill 2017 funds. No county general funds are involved.
Essentially, this is a contract for professional engineering design services for our summer 2024 paving package that we're looking to develop. It's essentially about 4.85 miles of road. We've talked about the discussion around the cost of these projects vary if they're urban or rural. Essentially, we did provide within the documentation, I believe it's on page 2, the last paragraph before the procurement process, the total estimated cost, then we broke it down by project, so you had a good idea about more specificity on which paving project and what those costs are associated with it. This project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on August 1st, 2023. Proposals were publicly opened on August 31st, 2023. Those were reviewed and evaluated. Essentially, Consor North America was found to be the highest qualified bidder for that proposal. With that, we request the board authorization for this contract.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you very much.
All right, all of these consent agenda items except H3S number 4, the vaccine grant, and adding county admin number 3, the courthouse change order number 13, will be on this Thursday's business meeting for your final action. All right.
Thank you very much.
Phew, back to the regular issues list. Next, briefing on a public hearing you'll have this Thursday for a supplemental budget resolution at the December 14th business meeting. Elizabeth Comfort, the finance director, will give you a high-level overview of what that will be about. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Good morning. Before you, I bring our second supplemental budget, for fiscal year 23-24. And in accordance with Oregon budget law found in ORS 294, I bring this to you as a supplemental budget. Prior to any of these expenses occurring, we need to have the appropriate spending authority in place prior to. So just briefly, I'll go over these items. The first one is a decrease in our general fund budget authority to move $3.1 million of our opioid funds that we've received. We were keeping them in the general fund, but we are moving them to our special grants fund. And that's where we'll be tracking the expenditures and the dollars for the opioid program. Or the settlement, excuse me. Number two, we're increasing the finance department's budget authority by $125,000. This is to start the short-term rental compliance program, and these dollars are coming from the tourism fund. And actually, that's related to number 9 on this request from the tourism fund. Number 3 is an increase to the county fair fund budget for $2 million, and that is for the construction, towards the construction of the multipurpose building. Number 4, we're increasing the county school funds budget. Right now, we receive Title I funds, and then their treasurer disperses those to the schools. We were short last fiscal year on those, and we're increasing the capacity, the authority. We haven't received the funds yet, but when we do, we want to make sure we have the appropriate dollar threshold to then distribute those dollars to the schools. Number 6, that's the other side of the opioid settlement revenue. Budget authority, and then also previous approved ARPA awards. So when you approve budgeted projects for ARPA in advance, and when those then are spent, those dollars are spent on those projects, we then recognize those dollars, and that's what we're doing here again, of $5.8 million. And then lastly, number 8 is a health center's budget authority increasing about $57,000, and that is offset by, it's to increase a staffing member, which then also allows increases in charges and fees, so they offset each other. And I think I covered them. Oh, I'm sorry, I did miss one. Items number 5 and 7 is a correcting transfer about $40,000 between the H3S fund and DTD fund, so that is a correcting entry.
Thank you. Elizabeth, does any commissioner have any questions on this?
No. Thank you.
Seeing no objections to this moving forward, Gary?
Thank you. Yes, it'll be a public hearing this Thursday's business meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, advisory board and commission appointments. Tony, go ahead, please.
Beginning with the Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, staffed by the Equity and Inclusion Office, currently has 5 openings on their council due to term expirations. Through a recruitment process, 6 applications were received, and 6 are recommended for appointment. Apologies, commissioners, there are 6 openings on the commission. 2 applicants are new, 4 applicants are currently on the board. The recommendations are Gabrielle Blog to a first term, Vanessa Huckabee to a first term, Carlos Benson Martinez to a second term, Joselito Taniga to a third term, Ernest Blackwell to a third term, and Dina Stoltz to a third term.
Questions or comments
Chair, I move we approve the slate.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Savas has moved that we approve the Leaders for Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion Council Volunteer Commission with Gabriel Blog, apologize if your names aren't correct, Vanessa Huckabee, Carlos Benson Martinez, Joselito Tangena, Ernest Blackwell, and Dina Stultz. Any comments? Commissioner Shaw.
Yes. Recently, we have made some modifications in staffing on equity, inclusion, and diversity. This council, in view of that, do they have a modified mission? In other words, are they going to look at the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 14th Amendment, equality, and is there function to monitor the functions of the county to ensure that all people are included, all people have equal access to county services? Mr. Schmidt, what are we voting on now?
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. The Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, their mission from their bylaws, they are an advisory board. They advise the Board of County Commissioners and county staff on how the county government can best serve underserved communities. That's their mission statement. So they will do whatever you direct them to do or what staff asks for their input on items. They're an advisory board.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, colleagues, I'd be more than willing to work with this committee to not get us involved in discussions that are not going to be helpful and move us forward. And I know I just had a quick chat with Tootie, and I think you may disagree with me on this, but for me, just to give you one example, and I feel about this strongly, is because of my history with Canby. Basically, if you've heard this story before of how when I was working with the farm workers on our farm, they didn't have housing, and there was nothing in the local community to get them housing and make sure they're getting food, clothing, and so on and so forth. And I had to do a lot on my own, and I always give credit to the Sisters of Mount Angel because they still have that program going. And, okay, and the reason I'm going to say this is because I think, for me, the Canby Center, one of the reasons I voted for that is, to me, that is, it's not polarizing. But it is, for me, an example of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because finally, for the first time, there's a coordinated effort to help a population, mostly Hispanic and otherwise, but poor people with food, clothing, education, all the work that they do. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to give them the ARPA money. And I know maybe you don't think there's a connection, but to me, that's what I think the on-the-ground work is. And if we keep getting involved with divisive ideology, rather than getting on-the-ground work done with what it really needs to make something happen, that's what I think the problem is. And just for what it's worth, with my friends and colleagues here, I talked to a very, very liberal friend of mine recently who I was on the outs with because I'm not liberal enough for them. And he finally looked at me and said, "Oh, I get it. You're just not an ideologue." And no, I think we ought to look at on the ground what's working with faith-based organizations, all these organizations. I think there was a study of what all the outreach was in the county with communities of color stuff. I think we need to depoliticize this and look at on the ground ways of working. And I'm hopeful you'll at least give them a chance because I think that we can be, I think it can be brought to being where it's not divisive anymore. The rhetoric has been too divisive. It gets dragged down, and I mean, we can talk about all the theories that are out there, but the real issue for me is it's on the ground, services to the people and making sure poor people get served. And we have a lot of poor people who are Hispanic, Black, so on and so forth. We just want to make sure they get what they need and want. And anyway, that's why I did make the connection between the Canby Center and that, because I just knew that there was nothing there for years. And when those folks stepped up to the plate with what they're doing, that's to me what it's all about. And I think I can bring that message. And I think, Paul, I think I can bring that message to be a moderator rather than feeling as if we're attacking people for their political stances. That's shouldn't be the role of what we do.
I don't know what you're talking about. This board is asked to make an appointment, Martha.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's why I'm going to.
You have gone off on a tangent that I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I just want to say, I think part of the difficulty is I want to see this commission moving forward, because I think that I think there's been a lot of miscommunication with them. And I think that there's been too much division with it and ideology, and I would like to work to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's kind of how I see it. And so I just want to make sure that, since I want to help with this and want to see this go forward, that people will understand at least my framework for it.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes. Well, Commissioner Schrader, I appreciate what you said. I agree. I too believe that this council needs to be completely nonpartisan, completely concerned only with providing eyes and ears to the Board of Commissioners on the overall health and welfare of all people of Clackamas County. Yeah, thank you.
So that's kind of where I'm going with it. So I hope that we can move forward with this, and I will do my best to make sure it doesn't roll off into things that just are a waste of our time and hurt people.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I think I understand Commissioner Schrader's point. She wants to attend these meetings and help guide them through what the purpose of the committee is and keep them focused. I think that's a good thing. So whether Commissioner Schrader wants to bring an action forward to have her nominated as liaison, it may be in January. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with you attending either way. But I did want to just say one thing, Chair. I have to be in Salem pretty soon.
Okay,
so I need to leave, and it's very important. I think the one item on transportation.
I was going to try to take a break before we brought up the transportation item, and there's some meeting, other RAC, AOC, proxy votes, but let's continue with this item and have a discussion.
Yeah, just call for the question, please.
It's going to be my next thing.
Okay,
Commissioner
yay.
Savas has moved we approve the appointments for this particular advisory council,
Seconded.
and Commissioner Scholl has seconded that.
Okay.
Tony, please take the roll.
Commissioner West,
No.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
No, motion passes 3-2. Now, Commissioners, what would you like to do next? I personally would like a break, but Commissioner Savas says he has to leave. Commissioners, because of this issue, I'm going to give all notice, starting December, we may be adjusting our meeting times so we can fully complete our business when it comes up. So that's, Paul, you'll probably appreciate that, okay?
Yeah.
So we don't have to, so we can get done by noon, so commissioners can schedule the rest of our very busy days, besides what we have to do here at the dais. So, Commissioners, Gary, do you want to take up the next issue with, I think Commissioner Savas has requested transportation funding?
Yes, can we please finish the ABC appointments? There's one more, Community Road Fund Advisory
Yes, I
Committee.
got ahead of myself. Go ahead.
Community Road Fund Advisory Committee, staffed by Transportation and Development, currently has 7 openings on their board. Through a recruitment process, 16 applications were received, 7 are recommended for appointment.
I move approval.
Second.
It looks like Commissioner Schrader has moved for approval of the Community Road Advisory Committee of Nathan McCarty, Sue Hine, Charles Parker, Lori Freeman Swanson, Jay Penagos, Donald Morgan, and Henry Epstein, and Commissioner Savas has seconded the motion. I will note there are 5 that are brand-new appointees on this. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Gary, what's next?
We could jump ahead to transportation funding, a request by Commissioner Savas, and there was a memo in the packet from him.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. As you recall, I have been requesting we have a conversation about how we prepare and answer the question being out there right now with regard to transportation funding. Last week, we renewed our goals, priorities. One of those in particular here is the I-205 project, the bottleneck project, which is more than the bridge. It's the lanes all the way out to Stafford Road, between the Abernathy Bridge and Stafford Road. You reaffirm that. Our legislative staff, our transportation staff, all of us are working hard to get that project back on the ground, even including conversations as late as yesterday afternoon and conversations when I land in Salem here in about an hour or so. So it would be helpful, and not to pin the commissioners, my colleagues down. That's not my goal. My goal is to, at least convey that to the transportation decision makers that, number one, we do want to see the project back on board, but we also know there's a funding cliff, a funding crisis, and this board's also taken a very strong position that I will characterize as we oppose ODOT's current tolling proposal. And so that is our position. So in lieu of a tolling program, something will have to be done to fill the gap with regards to the high inflationary aspects that we're experiencing here in the last couple of years as of COVID, because the construction costs have just skyrocketed, have doubled actually. This project initially, when it was passed in 2017, was almost $500 million, $250 for the bridge, $250 for the lanes, and just the bridge project today is $600 million. So that was not anticipated, nor, of course, all the other bottleneck projects have seen similar spikes in cost. So therefore, I think the funding gap is real. We don't have an exact number. I don't have an exact number. I'm here. I'm not advocating for ODOT by any means, but I am advocating for what can we convey to our state legislators that we would like them to consider and evaluate. And I think those are the words at the very end. My last sentence here, I'll read it out loud. If we assume that the additional revenue of $30 million is necessary to fund the debt service to construct the 205 project, again, the bridge to the third lane to Stafford, which of these mechanisms should the state consider and evaluate in lieu of tolling? My recommendation, if you look at the bottom of the page and look at that table that has the green bar on top that says units of investment, I think it's really informative. This is an ODOT document. All the slides here are ODOT documents. Thank you, ODOT. But I really found this one valuable because it kind of gives an idea of what a penny would do and what they can bond on. And so my recommendation for short term, not a long term, but my recommendation is we have them look at vehicle registration fees or fuel tax and come up with some kind of a number that would give us a range of what they're looking at, and then evaluate whether or not we support that. So I'm not saying that we're supporting a number, but look at a mechanism of what they could, and bring that back to us. So I just respectfully request that maybe we ask them to look at those, and let me, as your representative, continue to have them look at that and come back to us with a number or what that would look like. So that's what I'm seeking here today.
Well,
Colleagues.
Commissioner Savas, Commissioner Schrader and I had lunch with the governor last week, and she brought up transportation. She says, let's discuss transportation. She says, you do know tolling is going to go ahead. We have just put a 2-year pause on it. That's all. And you've made the assumption that tolling is going away because 4 members of this board, with your abstention, voted to support IP4, a vote before tolls. First of all, we don't know that if IP4 is going to be successful in its signature gathering, and we won't know until June. Okay? And secondly, I am not in the position to support any type of increase because, number one, we don't know, just because the Board of County Commissioners of this county says X, Y, and Z, if what we want to fix our projects, if the tax occurs in our county, that will be dedicated to our county, and that was one of the problems that we had with the tolling issue, and we still have that. So I think this document is very premature. I've said it from the very beginning. I do not think that you need, if this is an ODOT document, you don't need to say that it's coming from this Board of County Commissioners. If ODOT already has this document, then they can go ahead with this document. I am not willing to support any type of increases at this time until we know fully that tolling is off the table. I don't believe it is. I believe the governor is going to continue to push it through, regardless of what any jurisdiction does. I do think, however, Commissioner Schrader, in our conversation with the governor, she was very surprised at what had not been done, and she assumed that documents and information was released through the Department of Transportation to our local jurisdictions, and it has not. So I think we need to wait for that. I'm not willing, for instance, to say here today, we support a 1 cent increase in fuel tax, or look at any of these increases on these. In fact, maybe what we should be looking at is an audit of the Oregon Department of Transportation and taking some of these existing fees, like Commissioner West, you have said the DEQ fee, following a similar tact as Washington State does, and I mentioned that to the governor. I says, Jay Inslee, your counterpart in Washington, has done this with a DEQ fee. She says, what? I says, yeah. She didn't even know that. So I think the conversation, you can help me with this. Christine Lewis was there, and she was very pointed. She's been at MPAC, and she knew the numbers laying out, and we used the lunch as a very wonderful education process with the governor. I do think, even though she listened to us, she will continue with the tolling, because I think any other approach is going to be too hard of a lift for her and the legislature. I don't see the will, quite frankly, for them to look at anything else, and I am not prepared today to vote in favor of this. Quite frankly, I'm not wanting to send our constituents a Christmas present saying, we support increased registration fees and fuel taxes. So that's a Christmas present that I am not going to support today. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Savas, I appreciate your effort here. A couple of things. We have a short session coming up in February. I wonder how this might be used to help influence our state legislators on looking at this important issue. The other thing is that, in a state that's got I think it's a $127 billion biennial budget, we can't, at the state level, take that money and augur out what we need to pay for this highway. The idea of tolling, where we know that some 65 cents or more out of every tolled dollar is going to go to pay for the infrastructure of tolling, with maybe 35 cents out of your dollar going to a pot of money that could someday provide for infrastructure development for our transportation. Tolling is horrible. And so we have struggled, ever since I've been here, to try to communicate to ODOT, and we get a response that appears as though our pleads have fallen on deaf ears. So, I too understand this effort to send up another signal to ODOT to stop and think. I don't know what else we can do, Commissioner Savas, other than present this idea that you've given us this morning.
Yep. Well, thank you, Commissioner Scholl, if I may, Chair. So just to make it perfectly clear, as I stated, we all five of us are not in favor of ODOT's tolling proposal. This would be in lieu of, not on top of. And as the chair stated, if the governor, I don't doubt the governor said what the chair said. Commissioner Schrader's nodding her head up and down. So, there are, I won't say there's negotiations, there's not negotiations, but there's concepts being thrown around. There might be, I think because of the pressure that the Clackamas County electeds have been presenting and the arguments they've been making, that there might be possibly consideration of some alternative for this particular section. I think we owe it to to pursue all those, if that means relief for the families and the citizens of Clackamas County who would be paying a toll, that we try to do something that would have a less impact on their family budgets and their household budgets. This is what this is about. So, again, we have reaffirmed that our position of the 205 project, this will be a short-term fix to get the project back on track ahead of a 2025 session. 2025, they'll be talking about long-term funding. This is a means, again, to replace a tolling proposal and not support the tolling proposal. So this is a practical means. I think we owe it to the citizens to find some relief because, the tolling impacts per family are just too much. This is going to be something to hopefully find some relief.
I don't think this is relief at all. I'm astounded that you would want to tax Clackamas County citizens. When
I'm not proposing to Chair, we do not, we have no power to tax, so please, we don't need to politicize
You are
this.
advocating to increase
I
the
am advocating
taxes.
that they look at an alternative.
I didn't interrupt you, Commissioner Savas.
And
I would
I didn't put
appreciate
words in your
that
mouth
would
either,
not-
Chair.
I'm astounded that you want to put this proposal as in your graph as a tax increase, as a fee increase.
That's not what
as a
it,
use
Chair,
tax.
you are
It says-
mischaracterizing. I protest.
I'm reading what you are saying here, Commissioner Savas. I don't know how else to
You are
define
twisting what
this.
I'm saying. I object.
You go ahead and object. I'm going to make my opinion, and you may state your opinion afterwards. Thank you very much. I do have an opinion as chair. I know that you don't like me to have an opinion.
You can have an
but I
opinion,
am
Chair,
going
but
to state it.
to recast what mine is in the state statements that
want
I
to
did not
take-
say, I object.
You want to take this document down to Salem today.
No, I do not.
And say,
No, I do
oh,
not, Chair. I never said
presented
that.
it
There you go. There you go. You are
presented to the Board of
again
County Commissioners.
mischaracterizing.
not what I heard.
This is unprofessional of a chair. It's very unprofessional, what you're doing, Chair. It's very deliberate. It's very obvious.
I think it's very obvious that you want to have a tax increase, that you want to
Oh,
find
then
an additional
fine.
funding
Yeah,
source.
label me with that. Yeah, you are the one, Chair, who pushed 3065 and 3055. We are in this mess because of your leadership on May 10th of 2021.
Well, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one,
So
Paul.
you own that. You own that, Chair.
I didn't know that I had that much power over an entire organization of the ODOT or a state legislature or the governor. I do not. What I am very much against, and let the citizens be clear, in your proposal today, and everybody can see it online, that there are increases that Commissioner Savas wants to advocate for when he goes to Salem. I am saying this board is not ready for that. Tolling is still on the table, as the governor made it very clear in our meeting last week. Citizens have not had an opportunity to vote on tolling because signatures have not been gathered yet. I think that any guarantee that I-205 is going to be fixed by either tolling or any fee increase has not been made clear to us. As a matter of fact, the opposite has been said. We also, Martha, you and I talked to the governor. The reason why Clackamas County citizens are so grouchy about this is because Clackamas County is being told first before any other jurisdiction in Oregon. And that is very unfair to our citizens because it causes diversion. It's going to cause economic hardship for our citizens. The cities are wholly against this. And secondly, they're tolling all lanes at the same time. Now, if you want to fix a system that can't even get off the ground, you need to look at some of these, and the governor was listening to that. We don't know what's going to happen. I am very sorry that Commissioner Savas lost his temper and couldn't have a good conversation with me on this, but that's the way he chooses to do business. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, I understand Commissioner Savas's frustration on this. We've been talking until we're blue in the face with ODOT And as you all know, I, for one, absolutely refuse to accept tolling under any circumstances. And I think it's unfortunate, again, that a state with a budget as big as our state's budget, that we cannot cut expenses somewhere in order to alleviate our citizens and all those people passing through our region of that absolute inefficient idea that's called tolling. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? Gary, what's next?
All right, there are 4 items left, Chair. Would you like to keep powering through, take a lunch break?
Commissioners, it's up to you.
Should
What
I take
items
us
are
to-
left? We have
ONC County's board meeting proxy, Regional Arts and Culture Council funding, Commissioner Communications, and I can do an agenda review very quickly.
I'd like to just power through this
I would
agenda.
like to.
and get
I can
it
do that.
done
What's up next, Gary?
quickly.
Right. Next, Association of Oregon and California Counties, or ONC Counties, annual board meeting proxy votes. Caroline Hill from County Administration, she'll give you a brief briefing. Commissioner Shull is a representative on this board, but they're asking for additional proxy votes from this board.
And which board is this again?
This is the ONC Counties, Association of ONC Counties Forestry. Caroline, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Yes, Clackamas County is a member of the Association of ONC Counties. Commissioner Scholl is the representative for us. According to their bylaws, we, as a county, as a member county, get 3 votes. 1 for Commissioner Scholl, and we need to ask 2 of you to assign a proxy vote for him to be able to use all 3 votes.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
I move that Commissioner Shull gets the proxy vote for the OTLC. I just want to thank you for all the work you've been doing. You also helped out tremendously the folks at, the Hopkins Forest Farm.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah.
for that,
Yeah.
because you have the connections
hope
now.
that works out for
Doing the
them.
forestry work, yeah. So hopefully there's a second for that.
I'll second.
Okay.
Commissioner Schrader has moved we accept the proxy votes brought forward by Commissioner Scholl, and Commissioner West has seconded the motion. Any further decision? Details to be worked out later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
And let me just say, the meeting for the Association of Oregon and California County Board of Directors is this Friday in Salem, which I'll be there.
Correct.
all righty.
Right, thank you.
Yep. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Shull,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Gary, what's next?
Next, Commissioner West asked to discuss Regional Arts and Culture Council funding request.
I would suggest we table that for now, since we don't have a full commission. What do you think? Or we'll probably not have a full agreement here.
Your mic's off, Commissioner.
It is? Oh, I didn't speak into the mic. Should we wait on this? I don't like the fact of waiting on it, but I don't think we're all in agreement on this right now.
Well,
We can call a vote, and
we have discussed this many, many times.
I know.
This is my issue. How many times do we have to bring back an issue that has failed? And I'm very hesitant to do that.
Chair, I would like reconsideration because I've never had a chance to make this, bring this forward with the entire board here. Every time I've tried to bring it
Do you wanna
forward, the
bring
board
it
is not
back?
here.
You want to bring it
Or-
back?
Or we
Can
can,
we do it, we can do it in the first quarter. I don't think it's super urgent.
Okay,
But I'd like
let's-
to continue to have the conversation and have the ability to talk to all my colleagues at once about it.
I'm okay with that.
okay, I'm okay with that, too. There's no point in having a discussion with this one in particular, because there isn't a full board here. And I know that you and I do a lot with the arts community, too, so they've been, yeah. Maybe that's
Okay.
why my right foot hurts. I've been getting my heels nipped.
Okay, Gary, what's next?
Bring it back in January. Quickly, a review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, December 14th at 10 a.m. This is your last business meeting for the calendar year. You'll have the supplemental budget public hearing you discussed today, all the consent agenda items you discussed today. You'll have a presentation from Public and Government Affairs on the Board of County Commissioners' accomplishments in 2023. We have a video to show you. It is phenomenal. You've done a lot this year, Board, and I hope you will be reminded of that when you see this incredible video. If you have any questions on any item for Thursday, please let me know, and I'm happy to answer it. Finally, today is Commissioner Communications.
Thank you, Commissioner Communications. Who would like to go first?
I'd be happy to.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to talk to you about the Association of Oregon and California Counties Forestry. The ONC forests include 2.1 million acres in Western Oregon. It's managed by the Bureau of Land Management. And of that 2.1 million, 93,000 acres are in Clackamas County. And for the, I think, 15 counties that are involved in our association, some of them have relied on timber harvest receipts to fund out the majority of their county budgets. Over the years, the ONC lands that were mandated by the 1937 ONC Act to be managed under principles of sustained yield and harvest have been cut back by different federal acts. And so for years, the Association of Oregon and California Counties have been in a legal battle with the federal government in an effort to protect the harvest receipts coming to our counties. And recently, in 2019, the Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. ruled in favor of the Association of Oregon and California Counties on a couple cases, one the monument case and one the resource management plan from 2016. Bottom line is this: the BLM has not been cooperating. We have continued legal efforts with the Association of ONC Counties to protect our state and our counties, and Clackamas County too. On 30 March of this year, I briefed the board that there would be a cost, a legal cost to protect, to continue on with this litigation. And I said it would be just over $16,000. We talked about having that money set aside. And recently we got an email from the director of the Association of Oregon and California Counties, and that amount is $17,130. So I would like to suggest that we have the county administrator send a check to the Association of Oregon and California Counties for that litigation. This is, again, something that was expected, and if we can win, that's going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars of receipts to the counties in Oregon, and probably tens of millions potentially to this county over the next decade or two.
Yeah, Gary, would you comment?
On April 4th, 2023, you discussed this in public at issues, but you did not authorize the payment. So I was going to bring back on January to have you formally adopt it. If you want to do it right now, that's fine, but I
Let's
just...
wait in January. I want to see something in writing. I don't like doing things that aren't in writing.
We have an invoice, but we don't have the
I'd like to see the
description. We'll get
invoice, and
everything.
I
We'll
would
have a
like to
memo
have
for
it
you.
be very professional.
Okay, we'll have that.
We're not opposed to it, Commissioner Scholl.
We've been doing this for years.
Yeah, we've been doing it for years, yeah. Commissioner West.
I have nothing to add to this meeting today further.
Commissioner Schrader.
Well, I just want to thank all of you yesterday for, I think you all got to the Oregon Business Plan event, which I'd planned to go to, but I ended up in urgent care and to a podiatrist. And when I have found out that if you have pain in your foot, you're more incapacitated than you thought. And when I spent Sunday walking around with a broomstick next to me, I knew that the following day was going to be spent in other places. So thank you for doing that. And I wish I could have been there because it's usually a great event. I hope you all had a great way to network with all the movers and shakers and represent our county as an economic development driver, which it truthfully is in in this state in ways that we have actually innovated the whole biotechnology piece, the medical centers as an economic driver. We're rebuilding our economic development program by starting to reassess what businesses are here and how they're operating. We did great work during COVID when I think some of the best things we did was when we had those the business recovery centers where we funneled dollars, I think it was CARES dollars, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was CARES dollars, to every chamber in the county to help businesses with recovery issues. And that was a great way to do it because they were on the ground, particularly with those smaller businesses that were needed to get the help that they needed to at least stay open and work towards recovery. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to work on economic development issues by identifying our clusters here of what we have, how good we are with manufacturing, and to really look to see with all the CHIPS money out there, I've kept that on my table, what a supply chain could be for our businesses here in this county I believe there's going to be an expansion in Washington County. They get all the luck, right? But I think that we could have our businesses here be real supply chains for the chip industries. And that is one thing I've talked to Laura about more than once. That's about it. I could probably talk a lot more, but I already kind of, I think, took all my time today with other stuff. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. While two commissioners were at the Portland Event, Commissioner Scholl and I were at the courthouse monumental, what do you call it, Greg?
Topping
It's a
event.
topping off. It's a monumental time in construction industry. When you reach the top floor, it's topped off, and there was a ceremony there. We had the Supreme Court Justice there. We had presiding Judge Wetzel, the district attorney, and Judge Steele, along with Commissioner Scholl and I. Any other elected, Gary? No. We had a wonderful lunch. They served the entire crew lunch. They're working double shifts, by the way. They start at 6 a.m. and they turn off about 9 a.m. And we are on time and on budget. Thank you very much. They're working very hard. And Mark, it was a good time.
It was. I really enjoyed being there.
Yeah, it was
Good people, hardworking people.
Oh, absolutely. Hardworking people really are the salt of the earth. Seeing no further business before this commission, we are adjourned.